different groups. They all get along really well. It's great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Do you still have 2 groups?
I do. I still have my group from when I was doing it for Counterweight. I still have that on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. Do you also, David, or is it all merged into one?
It's partly merged. Yeah, I think there's more people who could be joining, hopefully. Yeah, into one space, but then we've got plenty of spaces. So yeah, I've got the same thing, Jen. It's quite nice having people coming from different groups during the week, trying different things out, and everyone's starting to meet each other. I think there's a real sense of something building a bit, and people sharing each other's emails and kind of like, you can tell there's plenty going on behind the scenes as well. So yeah, it's exactly what it should be, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to this Monday, 20th of March, Solid Ground live stream. It's the 3 Musketeers today. Jody's not with us. She couldn't be with us today, so we'll see her next time. David, you want to start us off with intro to Solid Ground?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. So Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice, CSJ, aka woke, and or COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 per month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such. Thank you.
Dollars.
Dollars.
Dollars time instead of pounds. Very good.
I'm learning.
Well, so this past week, I got an email or not an email, but a text from a girlfriend who sent me a screenshot of just a little snippet of an email signature she received in her inbox. And I shared this with you guys just before the chat, but just to set this up for everybody. So she said, is this really happening? Are we really going to do this now? And what she had taken a screenshot of was this portion of the email signature where the person signed off not just with her pronouns, but also with her racial description. So she said white/she, her in her email signature. And this was just it kind of blew my mind a little bit. Like, it sort of does follow logically with what we're seeing, but I guess I kind of didn't expect that I wasn't expecting that. So I thought there was a lot to talk about there. And what are your initial thoughts, Jennifer and David?
Well, I think I jumped ahead because when you first said it, I was like, okay, so transracialism it's been a bit of a no-no, and now it feels like we lean too heavily on this. That's only a little bit. I'm already going further down the line. I'm thinking, okay, we're going to probably end up that way, aren't we? Because if people are identifying so much more as that, the intersectional hierarchy will start to make people tempted to change things. I'm no longer white, or how can I get out of being white? I think that's an inevitability. I probably jumped ahead a bit too much already. Another thought was thinking, why did this person just think, okay, a bit like an emoticon hand? Is that just me, constructing my avatar? That's a charitable way of looking at it. But you can't help but feel it's either someone who's trying to, flag their position in intersectional hierarchy, or even worse, it's something that's being encouraged by, I don't know, companies or people at work, or someone's walked out of a diversity, inclusion, and equity workshop and feels more so than before that their skin color somehow makes some big deal about who they are as a person. I don't know. So there's quite a lot, but
Jennifer, what do you think?
I think it is pure crap.
That's a better way of putting it.
I just think my race is probably the least interesting thing about me. And if I wanted to include something, after my name in an email, so people could get to know me, or know something important about me, my race is the last thing I would possibly think of. First off, I don't know that I feel like I'm so important that every time I send an email, I have to signal something about who I am. I think that's a bit of our, current narcissism, another display of it. But if I were going to say something about myself, I'd say something about, something I love to do, or, tea fanatic, or, dog lover in a platonic sense, of course. Like I would say something about myself. Oh, I'm white. And here are pronouns. It's just, I just think it's insane.
Yeah. And she said, my friend said it was the person she received it from was an employee of Seattle Public Schools. And she sent me a screenshot of a tweet by Christopher Rufo from December 2020, saying Seattle Public Schools tells teachers that the education system is guilty of spirit murder against Black children, and that white teachers must bankrupt their privilege in acknowledgement of their thieved inheritance. Oof. Sorry about the road noise outside. That's super annoying. But so if this is the way that they're being taught, is this and I guess it begs the question, is this something that these people are now being expected to include, as they're expected to include pronouns? I mean, we were expected to include pronouns at Antioch. Right. I didn't, but we sent memos about it and told that they were not just preferred pronouns, but they were pronouns. We couldn't even call them preferred. You had to just put your pronouns. And something that stands out to me a little bit is like the pronoun thing is a choice, right? It's kind of like what you were saying, David, about transracialism. The pronoun thing is a choice where you're getting to like search yourself for the true you and just declare that to other people. But the racial thing is like this, at this point anyway, it's like this really, you must confess it accurately, right? I mean, like there's articles all the time about somebody who was trying to pass off as some person of color, but was actually caught being just a white person. And so there seems to be a social punishment waiting for you if you put a preferred race.
So I'd love to know how that went. Sorry, Leslie. Like the person who was subscribing to the idea that they were a person of color, turns out they were just being a white person. What happened there?
Have you seen this? Like there was the Rachel Dolezal.
Oh yeah, Rachel Dolezal. I remember. She had wavy hair, didn't she? Yeah.
She what?
She had wavy curly hair.
Oh yeah, she did. Yeah, and she was apparently like, I don't know, painting her face or something to darken her skin. But there was another woman not that long ago. I don't know the woman's name, but I saw a series of articles about a woman who was trying to pass off as, I think, Native American, but she was caught out just being a white girl who had been like this blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl before she put on this persona for years. So, I mean, there's severe social consequences for citing a preferred race, right?
I'm just laughing at the idea that like we catch you out at the end of the episode. Turns out you're just being a white person. Oh, sorry guys.
No, it's funny.
I try it for a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, but you're right. It's the choice thing, and there was there was a trigonometry episode in which they had an individual who had performed a lot of surgery. I think plastic surgery, sort of cosmetic surgery, and then started experimenting with gender as well. And then another part of it was, and he explains quite in a matter-of-fact way in the interview, he goes, I was doing all this stuff. I was all about sort of changing and modifying my identity and my body, it made sense to me that I love Korean culture. I love the popular culture out there, and I've been out there and I felt somehow that a sense of unity out there, like the culture was sort of, had a real sort of nice fit for me and my traits and my personality. So he did then start changing his face to look more kind of characteristically Korean. And he was surprised. Honestly, I think he does talk like someone who just didn't have necessarily the self-awareness to know that maybe the culture wasn't quite ready for that, because there were people that were saying this is ridiculous. But then you've also got a certain sympathy I have for him, because it is kind of like a natural progression in a weird sort of way. And if we are also doing this weird push and pull of kind of cultural appropriation, whenever someone tries to identify with a culture outside of their own, because people can do that. People can take from all sorts of cultures and integrate them into their experiences and their own culture, and hopefully there's a level of sharing. If you're stopping that from happening, then yeah, maybe that we just fragment things more, and then people have to go, no, I'm transracial, and it's kind of the same blueprint of gender a little bit there.
I saw that interview as well, and I had a lot of sympathy towards the gentleman. I thought he made some really good points about how this seems permissible in certain areas. It seems like not only permissible, but encouraged. And so the blowback, it doesn't really make sense. It seems like a very chaotic identity formation system that we've got right now.
Yeah.
Did you see that too, Jennifer? Do you know who we're talking about?
Yeah. And I think it's always been a little bit baffling to me why there's so much kind of support in our culture for somebody who believes that they can change genders or identify as a different gender, but not somebody who identifies as a different race. I thought that Rachel Dolezal kind of came by her identity as a Black woman, honestly, in a sense, because her parents had adopted several children that were Black. I think they adopted them from Africa. And so she grew up with them and did quite a bit of parenting of them herself. And so it makes sense to me that she bonded to them and began to identify with that. And to me, there's much more salient differences between men and women than there are between a white person and a Black person, or a white person and a person, or whatever the two races. And so it's interesting to me that it's so condemned to identify as a different race, but not as a different sex.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because it's almost as if differences between males and females are such that the culture then pushes against by going, okay, no, we're both the same. And then you go, all right, fine. If we're going to redress the balance, we're both the same. Fine. We'll just sort of go along with that for a bit until it becomes too much. And you go, no, we're really not both the same. It's gone too far. But because race, there isn't this intrinsic differences. There's no need to push in the same way. There's just kind of like, that isn't an identity characteristic that is a kind of, shouldn't be a predictor. I mean, it obviously still has historical consequences, but yeah, you kind of think in a weird way, it's sort of, it makes more sense to be transracial, to be more racially fluid, if you like, because we probably all are genetically racially fluid anyway, in a genetic sense. Maybe not in a let's get sort of different skin dyes out, but yeah.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, we, especially here in the U.S., most of us most of us, I would say, are from families that have been in the U.S. for a number of generations, and will have come from a variety of different backgrounds. And so those boundaries as an identity category are not that meaningful to a lot of us. And so, yeah, gender, though, or sex is a pretty clearly defined boundary in almost every case. So I also did have sympathy for Rachel Dolezal. I felt that the way that she was pilloried was a little bit, I don't know, there was an extreme quality to that, the mocking and the ridicule. I didn't, it doesn't seem to make sense. It seems like it's all of this pent up frustration and confusion over what we're doing in other places, just pouring out on that one category because it's still free to mock. I mean, I don't know if I'm articulating that very well, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and if you really think about it, I mean, not to be crass, but I am crass, so I'll say it. It seems much more low stakes and much less dangerous to maybe go to a tanning salon and don a wig, which she did very skillfully, than it would be to take hormones that permanently damage your health and to hack apart your genitalia. So to me, it's like, which is more extreme?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's check in on the chat. There's, let's see, Jason Latrullo says momentum building. Hi, Jason. Friar Pessel says hello. Samantha McPhee says Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. Yeah, do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Jay Bourne says I think we all going to have to take a hysterical laughter break every 15 minutes or so in these deep conversations just to keep our sanity in check. That is a really good way to keep your sanity in check. Samantha McPhee says they said Trump was racist to call her Pocahontas. She had no Indian heritage. I don't remember if she did have Indian heritage or if it was just that she did very much or what it was, but she was claiming it. I don't really remember the whole story. I just remember the punchline, basically. I
think it basically turned out that she had none or absolutely virtually none.
Okay.
Yeah, what he said was what Trump was saying with calling her Pocahontas and all that. It's like, it's mean, but it's something can be mean and funny at the same time. And I do think it's funny.
Yeah.
It's worthy of ridicule.
Not above laughing at it.
When Aaron Kinsvater says hello, hey, Aaron, nice to see you in the chat there. A silly pet rat says, if we can pick our gender, can we pick our race? And yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I think that it seems like the cultural currency involved in the gender issue is just involved in claiming something that's not, well, and I hate this word because it's a fake word, but cis, right? Like this whole like normal baseline, you agree with what you were born with or as. And so there's cultural currency in being able to distance yourself from that so that you can set yourself apart in that respect. But the cultural currency, so it goes both ways. You could be a woman and then want to be a man or want to be non-binary, or you could be a man and want to be a woman or want to be non-binary, as long as you're moving away from what you are. Whereas with race, it's unidirectional. There's only one way in which power flows culturally. And it's because there's one side of you've got BIPOC and then you've got white. And it's very clear which one is bad to be. And so is this part of the reason why there's not an accepted fluidity in this area? What do you think about that?
I was thinking about this. I was wondering if maybe part of it is to do with the fact that to be a Black African American, is to be part of something there's a history to it. There's like a history for many, many decades and hundreds of years. And, there's a real sense in which there's a story there, but maybe with gender, trans, I don't know. I was going to say gender there isn't. I was like, well, obviously there is with gender, but transgender there isn't. It's not as though there's a group of people who we can say have always been there in the transgender community who are there. And then when you say I'm actually transgender, they say, well, we've got a long history of this. So I wonder if we're accepting you into that or not. oh, I don't know. I wondered if that was part of the reason why there was sort of pushback, because it's like you can't just opt into something. But then, I mean, that doesn't make any logical sense. I'm just thinking maybe that is part of the reason.
So like the culture, the sense of cultural entrenchment, maybe.
Yeah, the sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we've certainly seen that with feminism. There was this sort of attempt to create a culture of womanhood,
Mm-hmm.
which we haven't seen with men. That's never been accessible or endorsed culturally, but there was that. And now it feels like there's almost this fight between the trans movement and the feminist movement over what the value of that feminist culture is.
Yeah.
But that's taking it on a tangent, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it does. Yeah, I'm going back on my sort of encroachment into culture think because if it is just becoming a woman, then yeah, womanhood could be a culture as well. But I think it's more that transgenderism is fairly new to the culture, isn't it? So maybe there's a sense in which people are now filling up a new hierarchical slot in the pyramid in a new way, and it's all new, and people can go, great, look at my new shiny membership card. Whereas beforehand it was oh, I'm now identifying, you know, if it's race, you're identifying as African American. It's like, well, you can't just hop, skip and jump into that because of all of the historical context. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's interesting. In my human sexuality course that I took in my graduate program at Antioch, we were told that trans people have existed all throughout history. And basically anybody who you could point to, any historical figure that you could point to that wasn't a perfect representation of the Barbie doll femininity was considered gender nonconforming and therefore trans. If they had been able to take advantage of what we can do now, they would have been a trans person. And this was what, we were being trained as counselors in human sexuality. So
that's just an Orwellian rewrite of history in order to advance a narrative, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And talk about that obsession with rigid gender roles. So if a boy plays with Barbie dolls, wow, your kid is trans. Mm-hmm. I mean, that there's so much, I mean, obviously it's an erroneous way of thinking, but it's also such a rigid, stereotypical way of thinking about gender.
Absolutely. It's totally regressive.
It's very, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the non-conforming aspect of it. When did you first hear that phrase, gender non-conforming? Because I'll say I don't remember hearing it prior to, I don't know, maybe 2019, 2018 at the very earliest. Conforming, and the weight of that word, that's a severe word.
I remember like before I got onto the course, thinking about going on LinkedIn and seeing all of the buzz of new trainees that were going to be starting clinical psychology, and some of them saying things like, I will be going into that space proud, and it'd be, I don't know, someone who identified as something other than white, most probably, and they'd say something like, I will grow my afro out and I will go in there as a sort of, and I will wear my afro proud. And I just remember thinking that poor person is going to go in there, wear their afro, large and proud, probably get in the way of a few people who are trying to look at the projector behind them, and be severely disappointed in the lack of weight that their activism's brought. But I remember just thinking, I just hear you saying conforming, and I'm just thinking like, I'm thinking about people who dye their hair blue and then say, I think I'm queer. Yeah, I'm not conforming.
Well, it's sort of like the way that it's phrased. You're already told within that label what you should want, because who wants to be a conformist? I mean, who wants to be called that? you could say that in a different way that would sound positive. You could say acceptance or fitting in or something like that. But when you choose a word like conformity, which sounds like this unthinking adoption, uncritical, reflexive identification, sort of, who wants to willingly wear that label? Like I'm a little sticker on me that says conformist.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. So everybody's going to say, I don't conform. Me too. I don't conform.
Me too. It's that
exactly.
life of Brian.
Life of Brian.
Isn't it? Yeah.
You're all individuals.
You're all individuals. Yes, we are all individuals.
It's a perfect scene to illustrate this. It's perfect.
It is perfect.
Oh, Neil is in the chat. Hey, Neil. Neil Barnes says a guy called Ollie London decided he was Korean for a while and had surgery to look more Korean. Yeah. You probably came in right after we talked about that. We didn't say his name, but thanks for the reminder. And then a silly pet rat says Ollie London has recently come out saying he made a huge mistake and he's very, very vocal about making sure kids aren't trans. And
I really admire people who speak out like that about their experience, because I think it potentially could help people from making a really serious mistake that will affect them the rest of their lives. And I know people that detransition get so much hate, unfortunately, from trans activists. And so I'm very grateful every time somebody takes that risk and speaks out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Did you see the documentary Affirmation Generation?
I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I watched about half of it. I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
I did a screening of it yesterday. And, it was nice. It was a handful of people turned out and got to meet some new people. And it was interesting. And it is really, I think it's really valuable to hear the stories of people like Ollie, who've been through this. And his was more a more complex, different sort of process, but it's still similar. It's still using medical and cosmetic interventions in order to be more comfortable with who you want to be or feel like you are internally, rather than trying to find a psychological way to accept the realities of the flesh.
Yes, and the limitations of the flesh, and that really none of us look like our perfect idealized version of what we would look like. This is just part of the human experience. You know what you were saying earlier, David, about your fellow students writing things about, their identities, and they're gonna, go into class proud with an afro. It just makes me think of what Heather McDonald, I don't know if you guys know who that is. She's a writer and offers great social commentary. She calls it the parade of narcissism. And I feel like that's what we have. Instead of I'm going into school, eager to learn and what a great opportunity and to just absorb knowledge and to challenge myself. I'm going in with this identity. I'm going to be proud of it. I'm going to impose it on others. I'm ready to defend it and argue with people. What a way to go into an educational opportunity. It's just, oh God. And it's so adolescent too. I feel like it pulls us all back to when we were in junior high and you're trying to figure out what group you fit in with, and you're making sure you wear the right jeans and the right shoes. Only these are young adults, and these are even people in their, 40s and 50s that are all caught up in this narcissism now. I think we're creating, character disorders culture-wide. It's culture-wide cluster B poisoning.
Yeah. And really what a lot of it is just not having a safe way for the culture to have a mechanism to go, you're going too far. Because a lot of it, because this stuff isn't like, it's not like it's maybe it is teaching people to be like personality disordered or whatever phrase you want to use, but there's such little of a kind of like a self-righting mechanism of going, okay, you've gone too far now, or like there's not a way to say I don't agree with that, or it's just people are so scared, aren't they, to stop this, and we're seeing it. Yeah, we're seeing it in courses now. Like I think, yeah. I was going to say, like in the course below, in the year below me, it's been even more activist laden than some of the stuff I've seen in the current year group. So I think these people did go in, and they were sort of shining their shoes and growing their afro out and pinning their colours to the mast and going in there. And I think they've forgotten what they were going in there for. It's a real shame. And there's a sense in which, yeah, we could be talking about so many other things some of the time, but we have to give this its due, because there's not enough people pushing back. Anyway, we've
No, it's really interesting, and framing it in terms of narcissism, I think, is right on the money. And something that I've thought for years, I remember when reality TV came out, and I thought, that's really gross. That's just that's really strange. And then when people, and I've done it before, but like not a ton, the selfies. I don't know how people take selfies out in public. Like, how do you do that? Do you have no modesty? You can just like sit there and people are looking at you, take a photo of yourself. I mean, and I was trying to take a picture for a friend of mine the other day, and I'm sitting on the beach, and I'm like, I'm going to show my friend. And I was like, really looking around. I hope nobody catches me doing this, because it feels like grooming yourself and admiring yourself and doing all these things are immodest. And yet it's so culturally accepted, and it has been for so many years. And I don't know. I don't know if I have a question so much as just I'm kind of astounded by that.
Yeah. I was just thinking, this email signature that's now got white in it, then is this, so we've talked about kind of transracialism, haven't we? And do we think that that's going to be something that's kind of like, this could be something that propagates a little bit? Is this the next stage, do you think? White, able-bodied, cis, I don't know, what else could we put in? But
well, that's the intersectionality, and that's the way, like at Antioch, that's what's being promoted to do. And you'll see that teachers in their description of their course that they're offering will have their intersectionals, their labels. I'm a white, disabled, queer, whatever it is. Like I put in all of my little notes on who I am according to the different categories, the addressing categories, if you will, the different political labels. So yeah, I can imagine that being there.
I know people who, they've talked to me about in their workplace, they're either being encouraged or told that they have to put their pronouns in their emails. And, by forcing people to do that, it's not that you're so curious about who people are, because if you were, curiosity is something where, you invite the person to share. It's this insistence that people take the knee and say, yes, I'm endorsing this ideology. And that's the thing that I think is really most wrong with it, is you're trying to force everybody to say, yes, I agree that, your gender is optional, your sex is optional, it can be changed, and therefore we all need to announce this, and we need to do it to show that we agree with that, which is really interfering with freedom of thought and personal belief, which I find really shocking.
I think this is for me, this is like one of the hardest places to kind of almost explain your position on to people who don't understand what could be invited in if you don't simply announce your pronouns, you don't simply say your pronouns. I haven't had that experience yet myself, like in a room, but like physically there. And I haven't had this experience of people going, you must put it in your email signature. Yeah. And I don't know how I'm assuming people police that, do they? Maybe Leslie, you can say at Antioch, people start policing that a bit, but I kind of just think that's the thing that I thought I would find the most difficult to try and explain to someone what's happening here, and that we are curtailing freedom of speech in order to actually properly understand gender and identity later on down the line. Once we've really worked out as a culture where our agreed understanding of these things are, we can then we can have a bit more confidence about it. But right now we're still working things out, and pronouns being sort of mandated is not helping that. But it's a really hard thing, isn't it, to explain to people if you're asked to present your pronouns in a space with other people, why you're not doing it. It just feels like you're being the mean person, or you're sort of somehow, I don't know, preventing other people's existence from coming out, or something quite extreme like that.
Yeah, I've never had the experience of being forced to explain myself for not doing it, but in classes in my graduate program, you would have, if you're in person, you'd have to make a little name label for your table. You just make like a little name tent out of a piece of paper or something, putting your name on it. And you were supposed to put your name and your pronouns on it. And so I would look around the room and see who didn't have their pronouns. And I would think, and there would be like maybe one or two people. And I would think, I wonder if she just forgot, or if she thinks that if she agrees with me about, you'd kind of have this sort of curiosity about the other person, and a little bit of self-consciousness that you're not doing it the same way, and a little bit of anxiety that you might get called out for it and get asked to explain it. And so when we would go around and do introductions, if you didn't have your pronouns on it, I did have a couple of teachers ask me for my pronouns because it wasn't written there. And I just said, I don't have any special requests. And so, and then it passed on by. It's kind of an awkward silence, pass on by. But I could see going down as this becomes more and more accepted and expected, there being more enforcement of it. Yeah. And so I think being at the beginning of this, there's still a little bit more wiggle room, a little gray area where this is going, I think is not as flexible if it continues the way it is going.
Yeah, I've wondered in preparation for such an event, if it ever does happen, whether or not I should just say I'm gender fluid, just say and just announce all the pronouns, she, and then just see if anyone around the room wants to question me on it, and then say, sorry, I think they are my preferred pronouns. You're not allowed to question me on it, and just see how many people take the bait or go along with it, or I don't know. Or maybe that is it. Maybe we should just be like, if gender fluidity is really like a spectrum, then we're all on it.
Yeah. Well, I've thought I wish I had the guts to really troll it and instead say, well, I don't have any pronoun requests, but I do have some adjectives. And I would like to tell beautiful. You my preferred, yes, beautiful, successful, brilliant, amazing. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, you could kind of go anywhere with that.
I think one thing you could say is that you support other people who want to share personal about themselves, but that doesn't mean that you do, and point out that there are some people who are experiencing dysphoria who might not wish to share that and might be working through it, and you're essentially forcing them to talk about something that they are not ready to talk about yet.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a judo move, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You're just going to use their own momentum against them and pull them further to the left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely the one I'd probably encourage people to do, Jen, rather than why don't you just test the system out and go, I'm all of them. But yeah, no, that's definitely the one to explain, isn't it? Because that is, I think I've even read that plenty of people who aren't necessarily sure of where they are gender-wise at the moment in terms of their identity don't necessarily want to say and promote exactly where they're at, because that feels invasive, which is what this sort of stuff is.
Well, and I wonder if you gave the wrong tense, like if you gave some first person pronouns instead, and if they were, I mean, this is kind of silly, but what if you did? What if you said my pronouns are we, us? And then would people try to use that for you? And how absurd would this be, you know?
Yeah. Just, you could really tell who were the committed people of the woke church if they then came up to you, looked you dead in the eyes and said, hello, yeah. Well, mind you, they wouldn't be addressing you like that, would
No,
they? They'd have to be standing next to you and then going, we said that, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My Seven Sons says my pronoun is your highness or my liege. CNY photo video says my pronouns are your majesty and sire.
See, it doesn't sound that bad now, actually. I could really get on board with that, actually.
I like it.
AM says, at my uni, not stating pronouns results in being addressed as they. Well, isn't that misgendering? I mean, if I'm not non-binary, why would you call me they? Yeah, that would really be, that's forcing you into it. That forces you into it. And
it is. And it's also trying to say, oh, well, see, you can't tell just from looking at somebody. It's all it's what we knew for friggin' phrase until 5 minutes ago. We pretty much all had figured out. Now we just don't know unless someone tells us.
Yeah.
How are we all figuring out who we want to date? We have no idea what anyone is. Oh my God.
Oh man, that's a whole nother one, right? Like the genital discrimination thing.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is patently not used by the people that purport it, don't they? Because I've definitely been, it's been brought to my attention that I'm a white male more times than I can count, really, that and I'm thinking, hang on a minute. Oh, I could have used my own judo move there and said, how the hell do you know that I'm a white male?
How do you know I'm male?
How do you know I'm male?
Yeah.
We don't know each other intimately. Exactly.
So how do you know I'm not a cat? How do I, like, if I was single, maybe I'd be in danger of mistaking a horse for a man and do myself an injury, if none of us can tell it.
Well, I'm single now and I haven't had that problem yet. So I'll
It's like
watch it out for horses.
So we're clear. Identifies as a horse, Leslie. How good looking and muscular it is. Don't ask rank.
Yeah. Well, lack of pants is usually a tell. Yeah, so it's really interesting. This whole race in the signature. At what point do you think this is going to just really jump the shark for most people? Or do you think that people will continue to go along with this? I really see us cresting a wave with the woke stuff. But what do you think? I guess I would have thought we would have crested a long time ago. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just have too much optimism.
I think people are really getting bored of it now. People are getting bored of it. There seems to be a way in which people can communicate to each other. I'm noticing it now more and more. People who I consider fairly woke are going, oh, I hate that woke stuff. And I'm like, you don't even realize that you're in it. Or there's a sense in which I think there is a backlash happening. And I used to just think this will continually be a reciprocal role. And there'll always be enough loonies on the right that we can say, oh no, it's just those guys that say woke. But now everyone feels like they're kind of a bit bored of it. Not everyone, but I just think whether or not that happens, because there's the sense in which there's the people who, I don't know, the regular people who talk about it amongst their friends down the pub. But Whether or not institutions follow suit, I don't know. But I would say that on my course, we had a day that was going to be about decolonializing the curriculum. And then it was changed a few weeks before for a more open, I didn't actually attend it in the end myself, but I was told that it was more open. It was talking about othering from a psychodynamic perspective. It was thinking about, it seemed to be thinking about privilege, but not necessarily. I was reliably informed from a place that was just like, these people are privileged and these people aren't. And there was a sense in which every individual themselves is an amalgamation of different things that are very fluid. And I really do think that probably reflects a sense in which I think there is some feedback. I mean, I'm just talking about my course here, but I think it's a kind of microclimate of what's happening elsewhere, is that people are starting to change, I think. I'm trying to be optimistic anyway.
Mm-hmm. But you're seeing some signs of people just kind of, it's no longer the new thing. It's no longer edgy.
No.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good reason for optimism. House of Bad Influence says they're canceling themselves, snake eating its tail. You know what I thought was a really brilliant illustration of the snake eating its tail was a couple of months ago, I read an article that was written maybe in a blog or something. It was just a piece written by a therapist who was saying that the word transgender is transphobic, because it implies that you were one thing and you have transitioned to another, but to be really trans means you always were. Does that make sense? It doesn't, but it does, right? Like,
I know what they're trying to say. Yeah.
So the word, so you can't, they were arguing for the abolition of the word transgender and the adoption of just trans, because to say the whole word implies that you moved from one thing to another when that wasn't the case.
Yeah, that you're born trans, essentially.
Mm-hmm. That it's something innate.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the most clear, for me, example I've ever seen socially of the snake eating its tail.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, do you guys want to wrap up so we don't jump into another big one?
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Don't put it in your signature. Resist. No good will come of this. We all know that. But no.
Yeah.
But there's reasons to be optimistic at the end of the day. I do think there is reasons to be optimistic. And I think that that things are being, I think things are optimistic, not just from what you see in the news, or even the big cases that I think are great, like Nicola Sturgeon's situation with, trying to send a trans woman into a prison, and that being like a little moment where you go, okay, so that we do have a boundary here. It's not just that stuff. I really do think it is the way in which culturally we all have a tolerance for this stuff, and as you said, Leslie, like it's old hat now. It's boring as sin. It's just so dull to be sat around in a public space, and maybe people want to talk about something, and then someone pipes in with something that they've just read from a woke textbook type thing, and I think people are starting to get wise up to it. So anyway, I'm going to be optimistic again.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree with David. I do see signs that the tide is turning, and I'm feeling much more encouraged lately. And, I think in your school or workplace, if they demand that of you, to put pronouns in your bio or race, saying, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that. And doing the lawyer broken record tactic, where when they try to convince you or say, well, why not? Or don't you want to support people who are trans? I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that, because that will kind of let them know they're pushing somebody to do something that has nothing to do with their job or with being a student, and that they might end up getting in some legal trouble for doing so. I think it's a good way to resist.
Well, do you know what? I was just chucking another thing I was just thinking as well. I noticed a person who's coming to my group has a certain approach to some of these issues and these conversations, which is to take a humorous sort of light take on things. And if someone says, you know, why do you not engage in things in this way? He was sort of saying, I just say, it's a bit silly, isn't it? You know, it's a bit silly to be thinking about people in those simplistic, that's a bit silly, you know? And like just taking the weight and the power out of it. And I remember thinking that's a good reminder to me that despite the fact that, you know, I've been talking to guys like yourselves for a while now about this stuff, maybe there's a sense in which it kind of can build up and, you know, you can feel like, okay, this is a fight, but sometimes it can take the sting out of it if you're just in conversation with someone else and you can say, oh, you know what, I think that's a really silly way of thinking about people. It's really stupid. No, I don't believe, and like you say, I don't really believe in that. Yeah. I just, you know.
That's
I like,
yeah.
it's a very non-threatening way to go about that.
Mm.
Yeah, I just noticed in the chat, Friar Pestle says, if you could see fit to have a live stream strictly about reasons to be optimistic, that would be greatly appreciated. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's just put a cap on it there. And thank you both for a great conversation. And thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat.
Yes,
Thanks, everyone.